Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists nurses with nursing board issues. Last week there was a criminal decision which kind of sent shockwaves throughout the nursing industry. RaDonda Vaught in Tennessee was convicted of negligent homicide along with one other charge. And now, as someone who represents nurses, I can tell you that the industry is certainly concerned about the kind of repercussions of that moving forward and whether other states will start doing the same thing. I don't want to get into details about the Vaught case necessarily. What I want to do is give some tips to nurses on how to handle an issue like this at the employment level. And then maybe later on talk a little bit about the board as well. So we all know errors occur in nursing. It's just a fact. And if anyone works in a hospital, they have absolutely been around a situation similar to Ms. Vaught. And in that case, she simply gave the wrong medication, which ended up in the untimely death of the patient. If you work in a hospital, you've been around this before. Now, what are some tips on how to handle a situation if you commit an error like that? Let's kind of go through that. So what generally happens is if a nurse, provides the patient the wrong medication, someone's going to find out about it, or the nurse as well will at some point recognize their mistake. Sometimes they don't. And then what will happen is an investigation will then begin with the employer. And so the employer is going to pull the medical records. They're going to ask the nurse verbally what happened. They're going to talk to witnesses. And at that stage, there's really not much a nurse can do beyond just letting them know what happened. And certainly if there is an error that could then be reversed in some way and the patient can be saved, then obviously the nurse has to come forward and admit to the error. Now, what the nurse doesn't have to do is the important part of this video. What will ultimately happen is during the investigation, the administration will do one of two things. They'll either put the nurse on administrative leave while they're doing an investigation, or they'll continue to allow the nurse to work, and then at some point we'll bring them in for I guess you could call it a formal meeting. If you are put on administrative leave by the hospital, 9 times out of 10, they are going to fire you. So there is really no benefit to the nurse from participating in anything else. So let's say they put the nurse on leave and then 2 weeks, has gone by. What they're going to do is they're going to call the nurse back and they're going to say, hey, we'd like to talk about the situation, kind of be casual about it. And then the nurse will come in and then they'll be ambushed by HR, risk management, the DON, the manager, whoever, and go into detail about the situation. And it will likely feel like an interrogation as the nurse. But in that scenario, I would suggest not going back. If you're on admin leave and they call you in, they're calling you in to likely fire you. And there is no benefit to the nurse from putting down anything beyond what happened, directly with whenever the error occurred. They'll also generally ask the nurse to write a written statement going through what happened in their own words. Absolutely do not write that written statement. You are not required to write any statements. You're not required to say anything to the employer. So only bad things can come from that. And how they normally would do this is they'll ask the nurse to come in and they'll say, let's talk about the situation. And they'll say, oh, you know what, can you put this down in writing? And then once they have all of that, then they'll say, oh, by the way, we're firing you. So just don't participate in the process. If you're 100% sure that you made an error, and it led to some kind of like very bad negative outcome, and they put you on leave, they are very likely going to fire you. Now, I know nurses, they want to, obviously keep their jobs or advocate for their positions or talk their way out of it. None of that matters. The employer doesn't care. From the employer's perspective, they're trying to defend themselves, and throwing a nurse under the bus is like, they don't care. They don't care. The difference between erring on the side of getting rid of a nurse versus keeping them around even after an error, they're always going to get rid of the nurse. Just think about it this way. So like, let's say a nurse makes an error, the patient ultimately dies, the patient then sues the employer. Well, how's it going to look from the employer side if they knew of an error that led to the patient's death and then continued to employ that same nurse without any negative repercussions moving forward? It's very unlikely to happen. So as far as the employment process goes, obviously do absolutely everything you can to save the patient if it's a reversible error. But if you are called in for a formal interview, I would decline. If you're put on admin leave, I would wait until they decide to call you back, and then ultimately you should just resign. I mean, that's the smartest way of handling the situation. For one more thing, if you wait until they terminate you, on any future employment applications, they're going to ask reasons for leaving a job. And instead of being able to say you resigned, it's going to say I was terminated. And the same goes for the board. I've had nurses get in trouble where they have fudged their reasons for leaving a job, and then the board will find the applications to their new jobs, and they'll see that the nurse lied about why they ended their old job, and then they use that as a means to discipline the nurse. So those are my thoughts on kind of how to handle a negative error at the employment level. If you have any questions, you can contact my law firm at the phone number listed below, or you can reach us through our website, ChelleLaw.com. I am in Arizona, so I can't help you if you're not in this state, but I do think the information that I provided can apply to most of this, non-unionized states. Anyway, appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.